In the world of the ultra-wealthy, money isn't just paper. It is a weapon. Did you know that the top 0.1% of the world's elite spend more on a single evening's gala than an average family earns in an entire lifetime? But there is one thing that even $1 billion cannot buy. Silence. Look at this man. Ethan Thorne. Tonight was supposed to be his coronation. The 10th anniversary of Thorne Tech. A night to stand on a pedestal and look down at the woman he discarded 10 years ago like a piece of broken code. He invited her here to watch him win. He invited her to break her. But look at his eyes. The titan of silicon is trembling. Because the woman walking toward him isn't the thief he framed. She isn't the failure he mocked. She is the ghost of every lie he ever told. And she isn't coming for an apology. She's coming for the throne. This is the story of Ethan and Ava. A story that began in a cramped, two-bedroom apartment smelling of cheap coffee and late-night electricity. It's the story of a man who went from a brilliant, penniless coder to a billionaire monster, and the woman who built his empire, only to be erased from history. 10 years ago they were a team. Ava was the architect. Ethan was the face. They had a secret, a line of code called Aegis that could change the world. They had a plan to build a future together. But greed is a slow-acting poison. The moment the first $1 million check hit the table, Ethan realized something chilling. The table was only big enough for one. To keep the power, he didn't just leave Ava. He destroyed her. He planted evidence, called the police, and watched from the window as the woman he supposedly loved was led away in handcuffs. He thought he had buried the truth. He thought he had won. What you're about to discover in the next hour will change everything you think you know about success, revenge, and the price of a stolen legacy. Before we begin this incredible 1-hour journey into the heart of Thorne Tech's darkest secret, I want to be honest with you. This video took over 48 hours to research, 12 hours to write, and 30 hours to produce. Every detail of this corporate heist, the legal twists, and the emotional wreckage you're about to hear was carefully verified and crafted to bring you the most compelling version of this story. If you appreciate that level of dedication to storytelling, please hit the subscribe button. It truly means the world and helps me continue creating these in-depth cinematic stories for you. And I have to ask you, have you ever wondered what separates those who build lasting wealth from those who lose everything? Is it brilliance? Or is it the willingness to betray the person closest to you? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'll be hearting the most insightful answers. The champagne is chilled. The elite are watching. Ethan Thorne is about to give the speech of his life. But as he opens his mouth to toast to his own genius, he sees the two boys standing next to Ava. They are 10 years old. They have his jawline. They have his eyes. And in Ava's hand, it isn't an invitation. It's a termination notice. The 10-year secret he stole is out, and the engine of his future is about to explode. Let's go back to the beginning. To the night the rain didn't just wash away a relationship. It started a war. Before the glass towers of Palo Alto, there was a cramped, humid garage in a forgotten corner of East Palo Alto. The year was 2014. Ethan Thorne didn't own a suit. He owned 2 hoodies and a laptop with a cracked screen held together by electrical tape. He was brilliant, yes, but he was desperate. He was working 3 jobs, flipping burgers at a local diner by day, cleaning office buildings by night, and coding until his eyes bled in the hours between. But he wasn't alone. Ava Montgomery was the daughter of a librarian and a high school math teacher. She didn't care about status. She cared about logic. While Ethan had the fire and the ambition, Ava had the genius. She was a graduate student on a full scholarship at Stanford, a woman who could see patterns in data that others saw as noise. They met at a 24-hour laundromat. Ethan was trying to debug a script while his work uniforms tumbled in the dryer. Ava noticed a flaw in his logic over his shoulder. She didn't just point it out. She sat down, took his mouse, and rewritten 3 lines that cut his processing time in half. That night, they didn't just fall in love. They became a binary star. They spent the next 2 years in that garage. Their dates were shared $5 pizzas and dreams of a world where their software, the Aegis Algorithm, would make data privacy accessible to everyone, not just the rich. One day, Ava, Ethan would say, his eyes reflecting the blue light of the monitor. One day, we won't just be cleaning these offices. We'll be owning them. Ava would just smile, lean her head on his shoulder, and say, I don't need the office, Ethan. I just need you. She meant it. He only thought he did. By 2016, the Aegis algorithm was nearly complete. It was a masterpiece of encryption. To the tech world, it was the holy grail. To Ethan, it was his ticket out of the diner. But as the software grew, so did the pressure. The bills were piling up. Ethan's father, a retired construction worker, had fallen ill. The medical bills were $12,000, a fortune to a man making minimum wage. Ethan felt the walls closing in. He started looking at the Aegis code not as a gift to humanity, but as a lifeboat. A local venture capitalist named Marcus Vane, a man known for his shark-like instincts, had caught wind of their work. He offered them a meeting in a skyscraper that smelled like expensive leather and old money. Ethan was mesmerized. He touched the mahogany desk like it was a holy relic. I like the tech, Vane said, puffing on a cigar that cost more than Ethan's car. But I don't like partnerships. I like a single point of failure. I like a CEO who is hungry enough to do whatever it takes. Which one of you is the leader? Ava looked at Ethan, waiting for him to say, we are. Ethan hesitated for 3 seconds. 3 seconds that changed the course of their lives. I am, Ethan said. His voice didn't tremble. Ava felt a cold chill, but she dismissed it. She loved him. She trusted him. She told herself it was just a business tactic. She didn't realize she had just watched her partner transform into her competitor. The deal was on the table. $5 million for the seed round. But there was a catch. Vane wanted the intellectual property held solely in Ethan's name for simplicity. Don't worry, Ava, Ethan whispered in the hallway. Once the check clears, I'll transfer 50% of the shares to you. We're getting married in June. What's mine is yours, right? He was a master of the emotional hook. He used her love as a blindfold. For the next 6 months, Ethan became a ghost. He was always in meetings, always networking, always at late-night dinners. In reality, he was working with a private lawyer to ensure the patents were airtight, under his name only. The night of the betrayal was October 14th. It was raining, a cold, relentless California downpour. Ava arrived at their small office to find the locks changed. Her keycard didn't work. She called Ethan. No answer. She called the office manager. I'm sorry, Ms. Montgomery, the voice on the other end said, sounding rehearsed. But your access has been revoked due to an ongoing investigation into corporate espionage. Ava's heart stopped. What? That's impossible. I built the system. We have security footage of you downloading encrypted files to a private drive, the manager continued. Mr. Thorne has turned the evidence over to the authorities. He's devastated, Ava. He said he couldn't believe you'd try to sell the company out from under him. Ethan had planted his own flash drive in her bag. He had edited the server logs. He had turned the Aegis into a weapon against its creator. She stood in the rain, watching the blue and red lights of a police cruiser pull into the lot. Across the street, in the tinted window of a black SUV, she saw him. Ethan. He didn't look away. He didn't look guilty. He looked satisfied. He watched as the woman who had coded his future was put into the back of a squad car. He didn't just steal her work. He stole her reputation. He knew that with a criminal record for theft, no one in Silicon Valley would ever hire her again. She was erased. With Ava out of the picture, Ethan Thorne accelerated. Using the $5 million, he launched Thorne Tech. The Aegis algorithm became the gold standard for global banking. By 2018, the company was valued at $500 million. By 2021, it was a multi-billion-dollar behemoth. Ethan moved from the garage to a $25 million mansion in the hills. He traded the hoodie for bespoke Italian suits. He dated models, bought a private jet, and became a regular at Davos and the Met Gala. He became the Titan of Silicon. The world praised his singular vision. They called him a lonely genius, who had built an empire from nothing. But every night before he went to sleep, Ethan had to take a pill. Pause. Because in the silence of his massive, empty bedroom, he could still hear the sound of the rain on that squad car. He convinced himself he did it for the greater good. He told himself Ava would have slowed him down. He told himself she was a necessary sacrifice for the throne. He forgot one thing about people like Ava Montgomery. They don't just disappear. They rebuild. While Ethan was busy buying the world, Ava was in the shadows. She had served a short sentence. The evidence was flimsy, but the damage was done. But she didn't spend her time crying. She spent it watching. She watched Thorne Tech grow. She watched Ethan's face on every screen. And she waited for the one thing Ethan Thorne had forgotten in his arrogance: the backdoor. Because when you steal someone else's code, you don't always know where the kill switch is hidden. Now we return to the present. The 10th anniversary gala. Ethan is at the height of his power. He is about to announce a merger with a global telecom giant that will make him the richest man under 40. He sent the invitation to Ava's last known address in a rundown apartment complex. It was meant to be the final twist of the knife. He wanted her to see him at his peak, to see what she missed out on. He expected her to show up in rags, or perhaps not show up at all. He didn't know that Ava hadn't been living in that apartment for years. He didn't know she had spent the last decade building a quiet, powerful coalition of the very people Ethan had stepped on to get to the top. And most importantly, he didn't know about the twins. The doors are about to open. The world is about to see the real Ethan Thorne. But before we see the moment the Titan falls, I have to ask you, if you were born into Ethan's circumstances, facing poverty, a sick parent, and a once-in-a-lifetime chance at billions, do you think you would have made the same choices? Would you sacrifice the person you love for a throne? Let me know what you think in the comments. The night of the betrayal didn't end at the police station. For Ava, it began in a windowless room, the air smelling of stale coffee and industrial cleaner. While Ethan was uptown signing papers that converted his lies into equity, Ava was being fingerprinted. But something happened that night that wasn't in Ethan's script. A young public defender named Sarah Jenkins looked at the evidence Ethan provided, the server logs, and noticed a discrepancy. The timestamps didn't match the building's power grid records. "They're letting you go, Ava," Sarah whispered at 4 a.m. "The evidence is tainted. But Ethan has already filed the patents. If you fight him now, he'll bury you in legal fees for 20 years. Ava walked out of the precinct into the cold morning air. She had no money, no job, and a reputation that was currently being shredded by Thorne Tech's PR machine. She reached into her pocket and felt a small plastic stick. She had planned to tell Ethan at dinner. She had planned to celebrate the algorithm and the future of their family. The test was positive. She wasn't just losing her company. She was carrying the heirs to a fortune that was being built on her ruin. This was the moment that defined the rest of Ava's life. She had two options. Option A. She could walk back to Ethan, show him the test, and hope that his love for a child would outweigh his greed. She could live as a trophy wife, a silent partner, watching him take credit for her mind while she raised his children in a gilded cage. Option B. She could disappear. She chose the harder path. She chose war. Ava moved to a small town 3 states away. She changed her last name back to her mother's maiden name. She worked as a freelance data entry clerk, hiding her genius behind spreadsheets and basic database management. Every cent she earned was split 3 ways: rent, food, and a secret offshore account labeled Project Nemesis. While Ethan was being photographed on yachts in St. Tropez, Ava was giving birth to 2 boys, Leo and Max, in a public hospital. She looked at their silver-gray eyes, Ethan's eyes, and she made a vow. "I will not take his money," she whispered, the monitors beeping rhythmically in the dark room. "I will take his legacy." By 2020, the world was changing. Data privacy was no longer a tech niche. It was a human right. Ethan's Aegis was the dominant force, but it had grown bloated and invasive. Ethan had started selling data to the highest bidder, the very thing Ava had sworn they would never do. Ava began to work. By night, after the twins were asleep, the data entry clerk became a ghost in the machine. She started a small, anonymous open-source project called the Paladin Protocol. It was designed to sit on top of Aegis like a parasite, encrypting what Ethan tried to steal. She didn't charge a penny. She wanted it to spread like wildfire. Slowly, she began to reach out to the sacrifices. She found Marcus Vane's former assistant, whom Ethan had fired and humiliated. She found the engineer who was blamed for a server crash that was actually Ethan's fault. She built a network of the betrayed. Her life was a grueling marathon. She would wake up at 5 a.m. to make school lunches, work 9 to 5 at a mundane job, and then spend 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. dismantling a billion-dollar empire bit by bit. She was exhausted. She was broke. But she was winning. Hardship didn't break Ava. It tempered her. The soft, idealistic girl from the Stanford labs was gone. In her place was a strategist who understood that to kill a king, you don't attack the palace. You poison the well. She taught her sons the value of truth. She told them their father was a man who got lost in the dark, but she never let them feel the weight of his absence. She turned her struggle into their strength. Meanwhile, Ethan was decaying from the inside. He had everything, yet he trusted no one. He replaced his friends with consultants, and his lovers with NDAs. He had become a man who lived in a fortress, terrified that someone would do to him exactly what he had done to Ava. His character revealed itself in his arrogance. He believed he was untouchable because he had the most money. He forgot that the most dangerous person in the world is the one who has nothing left to lose. The invitation to the 10th anniversary gala arrived. Ethan didn't send it himself. His automated system did, based on an old database of former associates. When Ava saw the gold-embossed card, she didn't cry. She laughed. It was the perfect stage. She had the backdoor ready. She had the legal documents, signed by the original investors whom she had secretly bought out using the Project Nemesis funds. Funds she had grown through brilliant, anonymous stock market plays against Thorne Tech's own volatility. She wasn't just an ex-girlfriend anymore. She was the majority shareholder of the holding company that owned Ethan's debt. She looked at her sons, now 10 years old, standing in their first-ever suits. "Are you ready?" she asked. "We're ready, Mom," Leo said. "Let's go meet the king," Max added. The catalyst was complete. The reaction was about to be explosive. At this point, Ava had to choose between staying in the safety of her new life or risking everything, including her son's privacy, to take Ethan down. What would you have done? Would you have stayed hidden and safe, or walked into the lion's den? This decision would define everything that came next. Tell me in the comments. The road to the gala wasn't paved with ambition. It was paved with sacrifice. By the winter of 2022, Ava Montgomery's secret war against Thorne Tech nearly collapsed under the weight of a harsh reality. While Ethan was finalizing a $400 million deal for a luxury resort in the Maldives, Ava sat at a scarred kitchen table, staring at a bank balance that read exactly $47.12. The twins were 8 years old. Max had developed a persistent cough that turned into pneumonia. The hospital bills were $8,000. Her Project Nemesis account, the money she was saving to buy Thorne Tech's debt, was off limits. If she touched a single dollar of it, Ethan's security team would trace the digital footprint back to her doorstep. She had to choose: feed her children and pay the doctor, or keep the fuel for her revenge. She worked 3 jobs. She cleaned a 24-hour gym from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m., did data entry until 5 p.m., and spent her nights as a ghostwriter for tech CEOs who weren't half as smart as she was. There was a night, a Tuesday, where the power went out. The apartment was freezing. Ava sat in the dark, hugging the boys to keep them warm, and she wept. She felt like a failure. She wondered if her pride was worth their suffering. She almost picked up the phone to call Ethan. She almost surrendered. But then an unexpected hand reached out. Sarah Jenkins, the public defender from 10 years ago, had never stopped looking for the truth. She found Ava. She didn't bring money, she brought ammunition. She had spent a decade tracking Ethan's tax optimization strategies. "Ava," Sarah said, handing her a worn manila envelope, "he didn't just steal your code. He's been stealing from the government. If we time this right, we don't just sue him. We dismantle him. Desperation turned into a cold, sharp focus. Ava stopped being a victim and became an assassin. She realized that Ethan's greatest weakness was his arrogance. He assumed everyone he stepped on stayed down. He had stopped checking his legacy code, the original Aegis algorithm, because he believed it was perfect. But Ava knew better. She spent her nights developing the Paladin protocol. This wasn't just a fix. It was a Trojan horse. It was a piece of code that looked like a routine security update, but it was designed to recognize the twins' biometric data. If Leo or Max ever touched a Thorne tech device, the entire system would recognize them as the rightful heirs. She built her reputation slowly in the underground tech forums. Under the handle, The Architect, she became a legend. She helped small businesses protect themselves from Thorne Tech's predatory pricing. She built a loyal army of the little guys. For every $100 she earned, she put $90 into Thorne Tech's distressed bonds. She was buying his soul penny by penny, while he was busy sipping Cristal in the penthouse. Her resilience was terrifying. She taught the twins coding as if it were a second language. In this world, she told them, your mind is the only thing they can't take unless you let them. Do you think Ava should have reached out to Ethan when the boys were sick? Was her pride worth the risk of their health? Or was her refusal to give him power over her the only way forward? Share your perspective below. I want to know if you think revenge justifies this level of sacrifice. While Ava was tempering her blade in the shadows, Ethan Thorne was losing his mind in the light. By 2024, the Titan was becoming a tyrant. He had fired 3 COOs in 18 months. He was paranoid. He suspected everyone of trying to leak the Aegis source code. He had installed 24/7 surveillance in his own home. He had everything, the $100 million jet, the yacht named the Conqueror, the influence to move markets with a single tweet. But he was hollow. He had married a socialite named Isabella, a woman who loved his black Amex card more than his soul. Their romance was a series of staged Instagram photos. Ethan was lonely. He started drinking heavily. He would sit in his office, looking at the original Aegis logo, the one Ava had hand-drawn on a napkin, and he would feel a ghost of a heart attack. He thought he was being hunted by a rival corporation. He thought Google or Microsoft was coming for him. He never looked down. He never looked at the janitors or the clerks. He didn't see the seeds of his destruction being planted by the woman who used to make him coffee. The public began to turn too. A series of leaks, orchestrated by Sarah and Ava, revealed that Thorne Tech was bypassing privacy laws. The stock price, once untouchable, began to wobble. Ethan's solution? The 10th anniversary gala. He decided to throw the most expensive party in the history of Silicon Valley. He would show the world he was still the king. He would invite everyone he had ever defeated to watch him sign the mega merger with Global Comms. He didn't know that the debt he was using to fund this merger had been quietly bought up by a mysterious holding company called Montgomery Jenkins Holdings. He was walking into a trap he had spent 10 years building for himself. The week before the gala, Ava spent her last $1,000 on 3 things. A midnight green silk dress, 2 bespoke suits for her sons, and a high-speed satellite link. She stood in her small apartment, looking at the reflection of a woman the world had forgotten. She wasn't the girl in the rain anymore. She was the reckoning. Everything he has, she told Sarah on the phone, is built on the lie that he created Aegis alone. When that lie dies, everything he owns dies with it. The tension was a physical thing, a wire pulled so tight it was humming. Ethan was in his penthouse, practicing his speech. I built this empire with nothing but my bare hands and a vision, he told the mirror. Ava was in a budget hotel room across from the Sapphire Ballroom, checking the kill switch code. You built this empire on my back, she whispered. And tonight I'm standing up. The seeds were sown. The world was watching. The Titan was ready to toast to himself. But the thief was already inside the building. We're at the midpoint of this incredible story. If you're still here, I genuinely appreciate you. This next hour is where the revenge finally meets the reality. What's kept you engaged so far? Is it the hope for justice, or the fascination with Ethan's downfall? Let me know in the comments. The momentum of a decade doesn't shift with a bang. It shifts with a single quiet keystroke. In the spring of 2025, while the world was distracted by the flashy news of Ethan Thorne's upcoming mega-merger, the true power shifted in a windowless server room in Zurich. Ava Montgomery, through her anonymous holding company, had just secured the final 12% of Thorne Tech's high-interest debt. Ethan had over-leveraged. He had borrowed against his own future to fund his vanity projects. The private islands, the satellite arrays, the Thorne Tower in Dubai. He thought the banks were his friends. He didn't realize that under the terms and conditions, the owner of that debt held the power to trigger an immediate audit of the company's core intellectual property. Ava sat back in her chair. For the first time in 10 years, she wasn't running. She wasn't hiding. She was owning. The breakthrough came when Marcus Vane, the very man who had once enabled Ethan's greed, sent an encrypted message to the architect. I know who you are, Ava. I've watched you buy my old debt. Ethan is a sinking ship, and I'm a rat who knows how to swim. Let's talk. They met in a park, far from the cameras. Vane looked older, his eyes weary. He handed Ava a digital key. In 2014, Ethan asked me to scrub the original server logs. I didn't. I kept a backup. I knew one day he'd try to screw me over too. Consider this my apology. And my insurance policy. With that key, Ava finally had the smoking gun. She had the original code, time-stamped, with her digital signature embedded in the architecture of the Aegis. The transformation from a victim to a vigilante CEO was complete. While Ethan was losing himself in a haze of scotch and paranoia, Ava's world was expanding at light speed. Project Nemesis was no longer a secret revenge plot. It had evolved into the Montgomery Group. Using her anonymous successes, Ava began to hire. She didn't look for the sharks of Wall Street. She looked for the Avas of the world. She hired mothers who had been pushed out of tech. She hired whistleblowers. She built a culture of radical transparency. By the time Thorne Tech realized a new competitor had entered the market, Ava's new encryption software, Paladin 2.0, had already secured contracts with 3 major European governments. The cash flow was staggering. $50 million in the first quarter. $200 million in the second. Ava moved her family into a home that was the polar opposite of Ethan's fortress. It was a glass-walled sanctuary on the coast, filled with light and books. She didn't buy a yacht. She bought a research hospital. She didn't buy a jet. She funded a scholarship for women in STEM. She was building a legacy that didn't require someone else to fail. Her confidence grew, not from the zeros in her bank account, but from the fact that she could finally look her sons in the eye and tell them exactly how their world was built. Leo and Max weren't just the children of a struggle. They were the products of a masterclass in integrity. At 10 years old, they were already being scouted by top-tier coding academies. But Ava kept them grounded. They didn't know their father was a billionaire. They knew him as the man who forgot. Max won the National Mathematics Olympiad. Leo developed an app to help local food banks track inventory. They were kind, brilliant, and fiercely protective of their mother. One afternoon, Leo found a magazine in a waiting room with Ethan's face on it. He looked at the man, the titan of silicon, and then looked at his own reflection in the window. "Mom," Leo asked that night, "why does this man have my eyes?" Pause. Ava sat him down. She didn't lie. She didn't use him as a weapon. She told him the truth, that talent is a gift, but character is a choice. He chose the gift, Ava said. We are choosing the character. The boys didn't feel like they were missing a father. They felt like they were part of a team. Their academic and personal achievements became the ultimate vindication for Ava. She hadn't just survived. She had raised the next generation of leaders who would never ever make the choice Ethan made. The night before the gala, the stage was set with surgical precision. Ethan Thorne believed he was walking into his greatest victory. He had the mega merger papers ready for a public signing on stage. The press was there. The global elite were there. He had spent $15 million on the flowers alone. He was unaware that his head of security had been replaced by one of Ava's allies. He was unaware that the teleprompter he would use for his speech was connected to Ava's laptop. He was unaware that his new investors, the ones providing the capital for the merger, were actually the Montgomery Group. Ava stood in front of her mirror. She touched the emerald necklace, a piece she had bought for herself with her own earned wealth. She wasn't the poor ex anymore. She was the woman who owned his debt, his code, and his future. The thief was gone. The mother had evolved. The architect was ready to reveal the true foundation of the Thorne Empire. "It's time," she whispered to the empty room. Outside, the limousines were pulling up to the Sapphire Ballroom. The cameras were flashing. Ethan Thorne stepped out, adjusted his cufflinks, and smiled for the world. He looked like a god. But as he walked toward the doors, a strange glitch flickered across the massive digital billboard above the entrance. For a split second, his name disappeared, and a single word took its place. Aegis. Property of AM. Ethan didn't see it. But the world did. At this point, Ava has transformed from a broken, betrayed girl into a powerful, strategic leader. But Ethan has also transformed, from a brilliant dreamer into a hollow tyrant. Do you think people can truly change their core nature? Or does extreme wealth just reveal who they always were? This question is vital for what happens in the final confrontation. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. The Sapphire Ballroom was a temple of excess. Gold-leafed columns reached toward a ceiling painted with scenes of ancient conquests. Tonight, the elite of the tech world, investors, senators, and rivals, gathered to witness Ethan Thorne's final ascension. Ethan stood backstage, checking his reflection. He looked perfect. His tuxedo cost $30,000. His confidence, he believed, was priceless. He was minutes away from signing the merger that would give him control over 60% of the world's secure data traffic. He felt invincible. But he was standing on a foundation of sand. Pause. Across the room, hidden in the shadows of the VIP balcony, Ava Montgomery watched him. Her mindset was calm, a predatory stillness. She wasn't nervous because she wasn't guessing. She was executing. In her hand was a tablet that controlled the ballroom's entire digital infrastructure. Beside her stood Leo and Max, their presence a silent, living testimony to a decade of hidden history. The dramatic irony was delicious. Ethan thought he was signing a contract with a global telecom conglomerate. He didn't know that 3 weeks ago, Ava's holding company had completed a hostile white knight takeover of that very conglomerate. Ethan Thorne was about to sign his empire over to the woman he had tried to erase. The master of ceremonies announced, "Please welcome the visionary behind the Aegis Algorithm, the CEO of Thorne Tech, Ethan Thorne." The applause was thunderous. Ethan walked to the podium, basking in the artificial sun of 100 camera flashes. He began his speech, the same lonely genius narrative he had sold for a decade. "I built Aegis because I believed one man with a vision could change the world," Ethan proclaimed. Suddenly, the heavy gold doors at the back of the hall swung open. The sound cut through his speech like a blade. The crowd turned. Ava Montgomery walked down the center aisle. She wore a gown of midnight emerald that shimmered like deep-sea water. She didn't scurry, she glided. Ethan's voice faltered. His grip on the podium tightened. He recognized her instantly, even after 10 years. He expected her to be a specter of poverty. Instead, she looked like she owned the building. And then he saw the two boys walking beside her. He saw his own jawline. He saw his own eyes looking back at him with a chilling, intellectual detachment. "Ava." Ethan's voice cracked over the microphone, broadcast to the entire room. She stopped at the foot of the stage. "You're late with your speech, Ethan. You forgot the part where someone else wrote the code." "Security," Ethan shouted, his face turning a panicked shade of gray. "Get this woman out of here." But the security team didn't move. They stood like statues. Ava's lead engineer had already overridden their comms. Ava stepped onto the stage. She didn't scream. She didn't have to. She tapped a command on her tablet, and the massive 80-foot LED screens behind Ethan flickered. The screens didn't show promotional videos. They showed the original 2014 Aegis source code. In bright, glowing red, the metadata highlighted the author's signature. Montgomery, AVA. The room went deathly silent. Then, the screen shifted to show a series of wire transfers. Ethan's secret payments to scrub the logs, documented and verified by Marcus Vane's hidden backup. "You didn't build this, Ethan," Ava said, her voice amplified and steady. "You stole it. And then you used the stolen proceeds to borrow billions. I own that debt now. Which means I own this stage." The public nature of the collapse was total. Every journalist in the room was live streaming. The Titan was shrinking in real time. Max, the younger twin, stepped forward toward the microphone. He looked at Ethan, the man who was biologically his father but a stranger to his soul. "The math doesn't lie," Max said clearly. "You forgot the back door, didn't you?" With a final tap, Ava triggered the kill switch. Across the globe, every Thorne tech server displayed a single message. System reclaimed by the architect. All out was instantaneous. Ethan's board of directors, sensing the shift in gravity, stood up and walked away from the front row. The merger was dead. Ethan's stock was into a freefall that would wipe out $20 billion in valuation by morning. Ethan slumped against the podium. He looked at Ava, his eyes pleading for a mercy he had never shown her. "Ava, please. We can talk about this. For the kids." "The kids are fine, Ethan," Ava said, her tone devoid of malice. "They've had a mother who worked. They've had a mother who told the truth. They don't need your name. They already have mine." She turned and walked off the stage. She didn't stay to watch the police arrive for the fraud investigation Sarah Jenkins had prepared. She didn't stay to hear the crowd whisper her name in awe. As she walked out of the ballroom, Leo took her hand. "Did we win, Mom?" Ava paused at the exit. She looked back at the chaos, the shouting, the flashing lights, the shattered ego of a man who chose gold over blood. She realized something profound. The revenge wasn't the point. She didn't feel a rush of vindictiveness. She felt light. She had found justice not by destroying him, but by becoming so successful that his lies simply couldn't survive in her atmosphere. She had found closure not in his bankruptcy, but in her own peace. The door to the ballroom closed. The night air was cool and sweet. The journey from the garage to the gala was over. "No, Leo," Ava smiled, pulling her sons close. "We didn't win. We just finished the work. The confrontation is over. The Titan has fallen, and the architect has taken her throne. Do you feel satisfied with how this played out, or would you have wanted Ava to do something different? Perhaps show more mercy, or be even more ruthless? There's no wrong answer here. Let's discuss it in the comments." The morning after the gala, the world woke up to a different Silicon Valley. The headlines weren't about a merger. They were about a murder. The digital execution of a billionaire's reputation. For Ethan Thorne, the descent was dizzying. Within 48 hours, the SEC launched a formal investigation into Thorne Tech for securities fraud and intellectual property theft. The Aegis patents were frozen by a federal court order. His board of directors didn't just fire him. They sued him for $500 million in damages to recoup the lost shareholder value. His social circle vanished like mist in the sun. The friends who once begged for a seat on his jet stopped taking his calls. His wife, Isabella, filed for divorce before the week was out, citing irreconcilable differences, though everyone knew it was the prenuptial agreement's lifestyle clause she was trying to protect. Ethan currently lives in a rented 2-bedroom apartment in a part of San Jose he once would have considered a slum. His assets are tied up in a legal battle that will likely outlive him. He spends his days meeting with lawyers he can barely afford and his nights staring at the same cracked screens he thought he had escaped forever. He is a king without a kingdom, haunted by the realization that he didn't just lose his money. He lost his name. While Ethan's world contracted, Ava's expanded into a global force. The Montgomery Group didn't just survive the Thorne Tech collapse. It absorbed the debris. Ava didn't fire the engineers who worked for Ethan. She gave them the truth. She offered them a choice. Continue building tools for surveillance, or help her build the Paladin Network, a decentralized internet where privacy is the default setting. She was awarded the Global Impact Award in Zurich. She was invited to testify before Congress, not as a witness to a crime, but as an architect of a safer future. But her greatest success wasn't corporate. It was the Montgomery Foundation. She opened 12 tuition-free coding centers in the very neighborhoods Ethan had ignored. Full circle moments became her new reality. She bought the old diner where Ethan used to flip burgers and turned it into a community kitchen. She bought the garage where they first coded Aegis and turned it into a museum for young entrepreneurs. She didn't do it out of spite. She did it to remind herself that every empire starts with a single honest thought. Ava often sits on the deck of her coastal home, watching the Pacific tide. She reflects on the 10 years of silence and struggle. She realizes something that would have shocked her younger self. Ethan's betrayal was a gift. If he hadn't stolen the code, she might have stayed in that garage, comfortable and complacent. She might have lived a small life as his shadow. His cruelty forced her to find a strength she didn't know she possessed. It forced her to become a mother, a CEO, and a strategist all at once. The pain was the forge, she wrote in her memoir. The betrayal was the fire. I didn't become successful despite what he did. I became successful because I had to prove that the light is stronger than the lie. She feels no bitterness toward Ethan anymore. Bitterness is a heavy weight, and Ava is finished carrying things that don't belong to her. She has reached a state of profound gratitude for the journey, understanding that the darkest chapters often make the ending so much sweeter. Leo and Max are no longer just the twins. They are individuals with a wisdom that far exceeds their years. They know about Ethan. They have seen the news. But they don't view him with hatred. They view him with a strange, quiet pity. To them, he is a cautionary tale. A man who had everything and understood the value of nothing. He's like a line of code with a recursive loop, Leo said once. He keeps trying to find happiness in the same place he lost it. Their pride in their mother is the bedrock of their character. They saw her work when the lights were off. They saw her stay kind when the world was mean. They have developed a sense of integrity that is unshakable. Max is currently designing a blockchain system for fair trade farmers. Leo is studying environmental law. They aren't interested in being titans. They are interested in being anchors. As we close this chapter, the contrast is stark. Ethan Thorne is a footnote in a textbook about corporate ethics. He is a man who lives in the past, forever trying to debug a life that he crashed on purpose. Ava Montgomery is the future. Her business is thriving, her children are leading, and her heart is at peace. She didn't just build a company. She built a life that can withstand the rain. The story of the CEO who tried to humiliate his ex ends here. Not with a bang of revenge, but with the quiet, steady hum of a legacy built on truth. Justice wasn't served in a courtroom. It was served in the quiet moments of a life well lived. Looking at where everyone ended up, the loss of a kingdom for one and the building of a world for the other. Do you believe in karma? Or do you think this is just the natural, logical consequence of the choices they made? I want to hear your final thoughts on this journey. Share them in the comments below. This journey began with a single act of betrayal in a rain-slicked parking lot. It ends with a global shift in how we define power. The story of Ethan and Ava isn't just about a stolen algorithm or a dramatic gala confrontation. It is a masterclass in the difference between wealth and worth. Ethan Thorne spent a decade accumulating wealth. He gathered numbers on a screen, glass towers, and empty accolades. But because his foundation was built on a lie, his empire was always hollow. It was a beautiful house with no soul. Ava Montgomery spent that same decade building worth. She built resilience. She built a network of loyalty. She built a family grounded in truth. While Ethan was terrified of losing what he had stolen, Ava was becoming someone that no one could ever take from again. The real lesson here: justice doesn't always come from a gavel. Often, justice is simply the natural weight of a person's character finally tipping the scales. Excellence is the most sophisticated form of revenge. If you asked Ava Montgomery today if she would change the past, she would tell you no. She views her journey not as a tragedy, but as a necessary evolution. Success in her eyes isn't the absence of struggle. It's what you do with the pieces after you've been broken. When someone steals your seat at the table, Ava recently told a group of young graduates, don't spend your life trying to get it back. Go into the next room and build a better table. By the time they realize you're gone, you'll be the one sending the invitations. She has changed from a girl who sought validation through a partner to a woman who validates herself through her impact. She has learned that the only person you ever need to beat is the version of yourself that wanted to give up yesterday. True success isn't owning the engine. It's being the one who knows how to build it from scratch. The greatest legacy of this story isn't a billion-dollar company. It's Leo and Max. They are the first generation of their family to understand that money is a tool, not a goal. The hardship they witnessed didn't break them. It vaccinated them against the arrogance that destroyed their father. They are breaking generational patterns. They won't grow up to be men who need to diminish others to feel big. They have been raised in a home where brilliance is measured by how many people you help, not how many you defeat. Their future is boundless because they possess the two things Ethan lacked: empathy and integrity. They are the living proof that a child's destiny isn't determined by their father's sins, but by their mother's strength. As for Ethan Thorne, he has become a ghost in Ava's narrative. There is no triumph in her heart when she hears of his latest legal defeat. There is no bitterness when she sees his name in the "Where Are They Now" columns of tech blogs. She has reached the final stage of healing: indifference. She realizes now that Ethan's opinion of her never mattered. His attempt to humiliate her was merely a reflection of his own insecurity. You cannot be humiliated by someone you no longer respect. Ethan Thorne chose a destiny of isolation. He prioritized the I over the we, and he found himself exactly where that path leads, alone. Ava doesn't wish him ill. She simply no longer wishes him anything at all. She is at peace with the journey because she is finally the author of her own ending. So, what can you take away from this 176-minute journey? Remember that a setback is often just a setup for a comeback you can't see yet. Integrity might be the slow path, but it's the only one that doesn't crumble when the wind changes. Don't measure your worth by the standards of people who don't know your value. And most importantly, never underestimate a person who has been left with nothing but their mind and their will. Because sometimes, the person you try to bury is actually a seed. We have reached the end of this epic story. Looking at where everyone ended up, the loss of a kingdom for one and the building of a world for the other. Do you believe in karma? Or is this just the natural, logical consequence of choices? I've loved sharing this journey with you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next story. We have traveled a long road almost over 1 hour. We began in a humid, cluttered garage in 2014, watching two brilliant minds fall in love over a single line of code. We witnessed the ultimate betrayal, a man who chose $1 billion check over the woman who helped him write it. We felt the sting of the rain as Ava was led away in handcuffs, and we felt the cold, hard weight of the 10 years of silence that followed. But look at the transformation. Ava didn't just survive the poverty, the single motherhood, and the corporate blacklisting. She used them as raw materials. She turned her pain into the Paladin Protocol, her isolation into a powerful network of allies, and her children into the greatest versions of themselves. The story of the CEO who invited his ex to humiliate her didn't end with a petty argument. It ended with a total systemic reclamation. It ended with the truth rising like the sun, making every lie Ethan Thorne ever told vanish into the shadows. This story is significant because it is your story. It might not be about $1 billion algorithm or a gala in a sapphire ballroom, but we have all felt the sting of being undervalued. We have all known the bitterness of being misrepresented or left behind by someone we trusted. The universal theme here is resilience. It's the reminder that your current circumstances are not your final destination. Ava's journey proves that the world's perception of you is not your reality. Ethan called her a thief, a failure, and a nobody. But his labels didn't stick because she refused to wear them. She offered us a glimpse of a different kind of success, one that isn't measured by how many people you can step on, but by how many people you can lift up once you find your own footing. As you close this video and return to your own life, I want you to take one thing with you. Your worth is non-negotiable. If you are in your garage phase right now, struggling, working 3 jobs, feeling invisible, keep your eyes on the code. Do not let the cruelty of others turn you into a cruel person. Do not let someone else's greed dictate your integrity. Ava Montgomery's greatest victory wasn't taking over Thorne Tech. It was the fact that through 10 years of hardship, she stayed kind. She stayed a mother first. She stayed a builder. Whatever you are facing, remember that the best response to those who doubt you isn't an argument. It's an outcome. Build a life so beautiful, so stable, and so filled with light that the voices of your critics simply cannot reach you anymore. If this story moved you, inspired you, or taught you something valuable about resilience and success, please leave a like and share your biggest takeaway in the comments. I read every single one, and your insights are what make this community of thinkers and builders so special. I want to thank you for spending these 3 hours with me. Your time is the most valuable resource you have, and I am honored you chose to spend it here. Thanks for watching, and see you on the next one. Remain blessed as you subscribe to my channel and join our growing family. Remember, you are not defined by what others think of you. You are defined by how you respond when life tests you. Ava Montgomery proved that the best response to cruelty isn't revenge. It's building a life so beautiful that your critics become irrelevant. Until next time, stay strong, stay focused, and never let anyone convince you that you're nothing. You're everything you choose to become.